Talofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Sriswiki. Coming up.
As of now, we're still trying to get fresh water and drinking container in.
Thousands are left homeless following PNG's floods and earthquake. Meanwhile, PNG sends taro to New Zealand for the first time. And
you know, I performed here at Polyfest in 2009 when I went to Masterman College.
World champion boxer Joseph Parker returns home for a brief visit. The governor of Papua New Guinea's East Sepik province says once the rain stops and waters recede, drinking water will become a serious issue. East Sepik has been battered by rain, flooding and a 6.9 magnitude earthquake. Alan Bird told Lydia Lewis thousands of families have been left homeless.
Things are stable. We've managed to get some response going in terms of the things we need. We're still collecting information from some of our remote areas. About 80% of the information is in, but we're still also verifying to make sure that our information is accurate.
How are you gathering that information? Like you say, some areas are extremely remote and only accessible by foot and also boat at the moment.
We've tried to use our local counsellors using smartphones and WhatsApp and text messaging and things like that just to collect information from our local counsellors who are on the ground. In the past, we would have to go out there physically and that would take us about 4 weeks. So we decided to do it a little bit quicker by just getting people to send information in. If 2 or 3 people from one particular area send us information, then we're able to cross-check and confirm, and then we tick it off and then we move to the next area. In terms of death, it's stable at 5. We don't have any more, thank God. In fact, 2 of them died not as a result of the earthquake, but they died as a result of a landslip from heavy rains. And then during the earthquake, we had 1 woman and 2 children killed as their houses collapsed while they were sleeping.
And what is the latest on the water filter situation? Have they been purchased yet, and has the US Embassy agreed to help fly them in?
We're still working on that. We haven't confirmed a quote yet from the suppliers. We're waiting for a quotation so we can start getting payment processed. So we're still stuck at that stage. We still don't have a quotation until now. But we're quite certain, the US Embassy, they'll be willing to help.
How many more days until it's critical that aid for water in terms of water filters are on the ground and in the hands of people that need it? I mean, how are they eating and drinking water at the moment in those really hard-hit areas?
With the heavy rains, drinking water is critical, especially for kids. For the people on the river, many of them actually drink the water from the main river itself. So, and then, people are sort of, they've got receptacles and things where they are collecting water. It will be critical once the water starts receding. Then, of course, with all the debris and everything else, and then the water will start to fester. And that's when we're going to need filters. So I would say it'll be critical in about 3 weeks. As of now, we're still trying to get fresh water and drinking containers in. So when it's raining, they can still collect rainwater and put it into plastic containers, and so they can still have clean drinking water. But once the waters recede and there's no rain, then they're going to have to start to use the water sources around them, and then we're going to have really serious issues.
And you mentioned that traditional partners are welcome to step in and help. What is your message to the New Zealand government?
Our need really is we don't really need cash. Our problem is a logistics one. So, for example, we need plastic buckets, 20-litre buckets. So we're trying to source them in country right now. And that'll be for us to use the filters on them to filter drinking water. We need at least 1,000 pieces of tarpaulin. And obviously, Papua New Guinea does not have that many tarpaulins flying around. We're buying up everything we can think of because houses have collapsed. So people need temporary shelter to keep their belongings dry and of course keep themselves dry and to keep firewood dry so they can cook. We're going to need things like kitchen equipment, just very basic kitchen equipment.
Thank you very much for your time. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
I just want to thank people of New Zealand for their concerns. We appreciate that, people around the world are paying attention to our serious challenges brought on by, well, first of all, the flood, and then in the middle of that, a major earthquake.
A new research series on organised crime in the Pacific has recently been launched. The Global Initiative Against Transnational Crime Organisation are exploring the causes that are driving illicit activities in the region. I spoke with the head of Pacific Program, Virginia Kormoli, about the series.
So at the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, we recently launched this new series of research reports and policy briefs on the theme of transnational organized crime in the Pacific Islands. And the idea is really to shed some light on issues that are often forgotten or not fully understood, especially because the data is often quite limited and scattered. And what we have been focusing on is really looking at the influence of different foreign actors that are more and more present in the Pacific, and the kind of criminal activities that some of these actors are involved in. And the more you look into it, and the more you realize that sometimes, actually in many instances, it is business sector actors that are responsible for the majority of organized crime, as opposed to those criminal gangs or drug cartels, those that we would normally associate with organized crime. Of course, they are there as well, and Pacific Island countries have really become the set of so many different flows of people, commodities, many illicit commodities, but it's really oftentimes business actors that are engaging in these activities and really making huge amounts of money that benefits them and that don't really bring any benefits to the islands and their populations. Quite the opposite.
The first paper looks at geopolitics in the Pacific. How has this contributed to the growing problem of organized crime in the region?
Well, it has contributed quite significantly. When we started out with the research, we wanted to focus on the actors, who are these people, these groups that are committing all this crime. And the more we delve into the research and the more we interviewed people and we were able to observe different dynamics, the more and more often, the issue of geopolitics and geopolitical competition would come up. And by that, I really mean these competition for influence that we see primarily involving New Zealand, Australia, the US on the one side, and China. Of course, there are also other international partners that have interests in the region, such as Japan, Indonesia, some European countries, India. But really, I would say the most noticeable competition is the one that you see with China. Of course, these patterns of engagement in the region have we can see that have intensified in the 21st centuries. We see many international partners engaging more in the form of business deals, security agreements, high-level diplomatic visits, etc., etc. But then, the more we were looking into these issues and the more we could see how there was a relationship between this geopolitical competition and also more broadly foreign presence and criminality. And I think if I were to summarize that relationship, I think there are three ways in which foreign presence has an impact on crime. First of all, we see in all these international actors that have partnerships with Pacific Island countries, they provide some external support that helps build a capacity to fight crime. So that's positive. But also the arrival of all these different actors and also business actors and investments, they've also altered patterns of criminality. And thirdly, all these, the presence of all these different foreign actors also determines the amount of attention that is paid to combating crime and corruption. And this is due to multiple, political and also the diplomatic priorities that might impact governments' appetite to address crime, especially when crime is committed by by actors that have close connections with their countries of origin, with their governments. And so there are times where those diplomatic relationships between Pacific countries and the countries where those foreign actors are from, or preserving those relationships, I should say, actually takes precedence over fighting crime.
Yeah, speaking of relationships, how does a relationship between foreign actors they come in with the intention of perpetrating organized crime, how do they even form relationships with officials in local Pacific countries?
Well, so there is a wide range of actors, but think, for instance, as individuals who arrive in Pacific Islands as business investors. And some of them, well, many of them actually, they run completely legitimate business activities. They're bringing, money and investments on the islands, which are very much welcome most of the time, I would say. And so, because they're welcome, they're also able to establish, good relationships with the local political and business elites. They can also take advantage of the fact that there are diasporas already based in Pacific Islands from a number of Asian countries, for instance, and so that is very advantageous. But what we see is that in addition to the illicit business activities that some of these businesses are involved in, they also engage in illegality. And we see this in a number of industries. And in the upcoming reports in this series, we'll detail exactly those instances. But just to give you a preview, that is something that you see specifically in the extractive industries, where we're talking about illegal mining or illegal logging, where these are legitimate business operators that operate in places like Solomon Island and Papua New Guinea, but that also export timber illegally, or they harvest timber illegally, they engage in illegal mining, etc. So you see legitimate business operators engage in criminal activities. But then there's also actors that operate in the real estate sector, in retail, in financial services. We've seen a number of cases involving, cryptocurrency related deals and schemes, etc., etc. And I would say one thing that is important is I'm not, with our research, we are not criticizing Pacific Island leaders for welcoming these investors, because we fully appreciate the desire to welcome investors and to diversify the economic base of the countries, and that it would then support long-term prosperities. But there are also the criminal risk and vulnerabilities that come with some of these actors. So it is a very, very tricky position to be in, and we totally acknowledge that.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation that, the countries that are considered like development partners for the Pacific nations, they also provide capability around, the law enforcement.
Yes.
In your view, do you think they're doing enough to help tackle organized crime in the Pacific?
Organized crime in the Pacific had been neglected for quite a long time, and one reason for that is that levels were comparatively low with regard to other regions of the world. And then there was this kind of belief that because of the remote geographic position of some of these island countries, in a way they were shielded from the threats posed by transnational crimes. That has changed rapidly, and I think the responses have not adapted quickly enough. First of all, in many instances already, the capabilities and the resources available to local law enforcement actors were limited, and as those criminal threats are increasing, they don't have adequate resources. Of course, we know that countries such as Australia, New Zealand, the US, depending on which countries we're looking at in the Pacific, had long-standing security engagements, providing capabilities, training, law enforcement advisors, and financial resources. So in some cases, lots of training, for instance, has been delivered. But I think we are still a long way to go before law enforcement would have caught up with the speed with which transnational crime is actually progressing, which is very fast.
We've seen developments. Example, earlier this year, Fiji reported its largest drug bust, recovering 3.5 tons of meth. Is it only going to get worse before it gets better?
Yes, I would agree with you, and I think the example that you cited with meth, it should really be a reminder that we should no longer think that Pacific Islands are simply a transit points in the flow of drugs that from Asia or Latin America are being shipped to Australia, New Zealand. Pacific Islands are developing their own consumer markets in terms for drugs, which is a very concerning development. Also, in light of the fact that in terms of the health systems and like rehabilitation facilities, those are really very limited or not available at all. And also some countries are also developing domestic production. So you mentioned Fiji, but there have also been, over the past few years, a number of reports indicating that laboratories where methamphetamines, also other synthetic drugs, were produced in Fiji itself. So we are really seeing a big change in the drug scene, and so it's becoming very serious.
What recommendations has been made to address organized crime in the Pacific?
Yes, so in the final paper in the series, we really look into what can be done in more detail. One thing that I would like to say now is that, of course, there is lots that needs to be done. We appreciate to go back to our initial conversation about the geopolitical implications for the region. We need to accept that those geopolitical or diplomatic priorities are likely to take precedent over fighting crime in many instances. So we need to find creative ways to approach these challenges that perhaps are less focused on an exclusively law enforcement approach, which can be a bit sensitive from a diplomatic perspective. So I'm not saying that the law enforcement approach shouldn't be there, not at all, it should be there, but we believe that it should also be accompanied by approaches that are more geared towards addressing the socioeconomic and fragility situations that are actually worsened by crime, because crime is no longer is not only a law enforcement issue. It also impacts a community from a public health perspective in the case of drugs, from an environmental perspective in the case of environmental crimes, and also in terms of more broadly socioeconomic development. So if we look at how we can address fragility in addition to the law enforcement approaches, I think that could be a more sustainable and all-encompassing way of approaching tackling organized crime.
Are you able, Virginia, to give an example of a Pacific country that's already diversifying their approaches to tackling or addressing organized crime?
Because there is a long history of engagement or also aid to a number of Pacific Island countries. I wouldn't want to give the impression that development programs don't already exist. I think that perhaps they need to be better incorporated into the crime fighting strategies of these countries. So at the moment, I'm not aware of that integration between the law enforcement and development approaches already happening. But it's something that certainly I would want to look more into and see how we can also support and provide a helpful recommendation for in order to put this into practice.
A first ever shipment of taro from Papua New Guinea has arrived in New Zealand. The 13 tonnes of what's described as premium Morobe taro goes up against imports from Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Niue and the Cook Islands. Wantok Produce is the brainchild of PNG-based Dr. Lautofa McCarthy. His group has been working with the PNG National Agricultural Research Agency, or NARI, on developing the trade, which they're hoping to become much bigger. Don Wiseman spoke with Dr. McCarthy and began by asking about the requirements placed on the trade by the Ministry of Primary Industries.
Yeah, you're quite right. We weren't sure what the MPI requirements were, but luckily enough, they were quite helpful. In fact, the MPI regulations here are quite lenient towards agricultural products in Papua New Guinea, and they were quite happy so long as everything was done according to the standards that they requested, making sure that the produce was done properly in terms of cleaning them well, and then packaging and all the other requirements like having the package done properly, the processing facilities and stuff.
Yes. How much did you bring in?
This container, the first one here, was about 12,000 kilos.
And you'll be just selling that directly to greengrocers around the country?
That is the plan, and whoever else is willing to have a go at tasting the Papua New Guinea taro.
Is it different from taro from the other side of the Pacific?
There are some similarities, but it's quite unique. There's quite a lot of varieties, but the majority of them have got a very nice texture and taste to it. So we are not bringing in just one or two. In fact, this container is mixed bag. So there may be 2, 3, 4 or so different varieties in the one bag, 2 kilo bag.
There are quite a number of other producers around the Pacific who are sending taro into New Zealand. So is there room for more? How big's the market?
I'm aware that Fiji taro probably has the majority of the market, and then Samoa and Tonga. Other smaller islands like Cook Island and Niue and such, I think, do bring some taro in, but not in the volumes that we can do in Papua New Guinea. As you're aware, Papua New Guinea is the biggest island in terms of the Pacific Island countries, so population of probably 10 million, and the land mass supports that. So I think once we start to get the taro here and people have a taste of it, I think they will realize fairly quickly that Papua New Guinea taro is very nice.
Your situation's interesting, isn't it? Because you are Samoan, but have been working as a doctor in Papua New Guinea for forever, really, haven't you?
Yes. I actually got into Papua New Guinea through a scholarship that was offered through the Australian government to study medicine. And I completed my studies and then continued to do further studies to specialize in ear, nose and throat. So I've worked in Papua New Guinea for about 40 years now, worked in Samoa sort of intermittently. So I guess naturally I have an attraction to Papua New Guinea. It's a country that I know well, and I've got a lot of friends and family there. But the main thing why I guess people might ask, Samoan bringing in PNG produce is the fact that I know that Papua New Guinea has the capacity to share produce with the rest of the Pacific, including New Zealand and Australia. And this is through the vast number of farmers, which is one of the main reasons why I'm doing this work. Not sure if you are aware, but about 70 to 80% of farmers are women in Papua New Guinea. So their cultural diversity has it that the men are not the main farmers, people that actually grow taro and bananas and whatever else. So the majority of the farmers, the people that actually do grow the produce, are women. And sometimes these women farmers have problems getting a market for their goods. The infrastructure there does not allow them to regularly take their produce to the market and to people that will buy the produce. So a lot of them are subsistence farms. But I know that they're hardworking. So that's the main reason why I thought I would get into this venture, is to help the women farmers, because being Samoan, I know that mostly the planting of taro and stuff is done by the men and the young adults.
This is the beginning of something you hope will become quite big.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have other products in mind?
At the moment, we've started with taro, and there's probably 20 plus varieties. We've formed a allegiance or a private-public partnership with a government institution there, NARI. NARI is the National Agricultural Research Institute. So the aim is for us, my group, One Talk Produce Limited, is to team up with a team of scientists at NARI so that we can identify what the best species are, and then we would work with the farmers and encourage them to plant the species that the scientists advise that are the best and the most ones who, who've got the biggest yield and things like that. And then to teach the women on how to, in terms of the species that is good, and then the planting of the taro, the spacing. We need to teach them about progressive planting. So we run workshops where the scientists go with us, and the hope is that the scientists themselves will be coaching the farmers on what the best practices are.
You wouldn't have much time for practicing medicine anymore.
Yeah, I'm quite busy with this new project here. I do some consulting, with the technology now. It doesn't matter where I am. The clinic and other people that need my assistance can contact me, and then I can help out that way.
Professional boxer Joseph Parker returned to Aotearoa following his recent victory against Zhili Zhang in Saudi Arabia. The proud Samoan made an appearance at the ASB Polyfest where he spoke on stage to encourage the young performers. Tiana Haxton caught up with Parker to hear what he was up to at the festival.
And I've come here today to Polyfest to get around the people and just to say thank you very much for all their support, and to watch my cousin Victor perform, Victor Bass. I performed here at Polyfest in 2009 when I went to Marsman College, and I was on the Samoan group with my wife, and it's nice to come back. It takes a lot of effort to set this all up, and to see everyone come together and watch all the performances and to get amongst it, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, what is it like, with yourself having performed here before and now being on the stage to say hi and give some best wishes to all the young
To be honest,
ones?
it's like sometimes I sort of pinch myself. Like, I've come from humble beginnings and I've done very well, and I'm very grateful for the position that I'm in, very blessed. And it's nice to come back and to show everyone that no matter how far you make it and how big you get, you can always come back and just hang out and just enjoy yourself amongst everyone else. So I'm here with my cousin Poasa, Ma'a, and a few other family members, and it's just nice to get out and to get in there.
Yeah, amazing. And I saw lots of young ones walking around congratulating you on your recent fight. Could you tell us a little bit about how your recent fight went with Jim?
The fight I had recently was with Zhang, and it was a tough fight. I got dropped twice, but I was able to persevere and push through. And times like that, it's you really have to bring out the warrior in you to come back from knockdowns. So I was able to, get the win, which is great, and on to the next fight. But it's nice to get all the support from not only the oldies but the youngsters as well. And it just showed, we're trying to show that we're from this country, New Zealand, far away from other sides of the world, but we can, if we push through and we have goals and we set out to achieve, then we can achieve anything we want in life. It doesn't matter how crazy the goal is. And that's what I think me and other athletes and other people that made it are trying to We're trying to show that.
Amazing. And I hear you've got a rematch with him as well.
I have a rematch. It looks like he's going to be fighting someone else.
Yep.
So I'm not sure who I'm going to be fighting next, but whoever it is, I'm going to be ready. I'm staying ready, staying focused, and enjoying myself here at home with my family and friends, but my eyes always on the prize. Thank you all for the love and support, continued support, and I've had a lot of ups and downs in my career, but at the moment it's all on the up, and I can feel the love every time I come back home. And whatever you want to achieve in life, never give up, and never let anyone tell you that you can't do it. You can do whatever you want in life. Set out to achieve it, go hard, and make it happen.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnzi.com/programs. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whāsoi fua.